Ordinary Habits, Extraordinary Life is about mastering simple things in everyday life to expand your views, access more of your untapped potential, and evolve ordinary habits into an extraordinary life. Here is your host, Maria Bailey.
Welcome to Ordinary Habits, Extraordinary Life, where we dive into life's big questions with simple, real, and intimate stories from masters in their field, where we invite you to be curious, to be inspired, and simplify the way. 3 years ago, I saw this man stand out in a lineup of intellectuals, alive and intriguing. He seemed so interesting to me, carrying a mystery that draws you in and a force to be reckoned with. Jorge Ferrer is a clinical psychologist, public speaker, and educator, best known for his participatory approach to transpersonal psychology, religious studies, integral education, and intimate relationships. He was core faculty for more than 20 years at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, where he also founded the Shamanic Studies Concentration as the chair of East-West Psychology Department. He has served as advisor to the organization Religions for Peace at the United Nations and has also studied entheogenic shamanism for more than 2 decades. Jorge is the author of several, many books, including Participation and the Mystery, Transpersonal Essays in Psychology, Education, and Religion, and his fabulous latest book, Love and Freedom, Transcending Monogamy and Polyamory, where he wants to promote relational freedom, assisting individuals to choose and transform the relational styles in dynamic, integrative, and transcending ways. I can't wait to see what we discover and learn together in this conversation. Thank you, Jorge, for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Maria. I want to apologize to begin with. My English accent has always been quite thick. And since I moved back to Spain 4 years ago, it got thicker. So hopefully if there is something it's not clear, please interrupt me. And also I just want to say I'm a little intimidated by your presentation, but I'll try to raise to the occasion, and I'm sure we're gonna have a very interesting dialogue. So I'm in your hands and look forward to your first question.
Well, I'm just already smiling. See, I said you don't disappoint, because even your accent, we need to listen. We need to lean in and listen even closer. So I would hope that you're already drawing us in with just who you are. And again, so honored and pleased to have you with us. Jorge, as I looked at your life and all the things that you have accomplished, what I'm curious about, from where you stand, what do you see as extraordinary about your life?
I don't think about my life in those terms. To be quite frankly, when you invited me to this podcast, I think I told you, like, I don't think my life is very extraordinary. Probably I have very ordinary habits, many, but the extraordinary dimension, like, escapes me. Like, the only thing I can think of is like, for many years, I have received a lot of really great feedback from former students, from people in my talks, in my workshops, So I think that's what makes my life extraordinary, like to feel that I've contributed to the enhancing the quality of life of other people, even if a little bit. That makes me happy, and I know it's part of what is going to be meaningful when I'm in my deathbed, right? Have I lived well? Have I loved well? And have I contributed to a better world, even if in a very small ways, in my limited capacity, So I think that's what I would say at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's so funny that you don't, in some ways, like when you look at your life, well, what is extraordinary? And yet when I just read your book, your latest book, of Love and Freedom, I feel so strongly that is your invitation to people. It's like, don't settle. right? Like the wherever you are, and I was surprised because you weren't really cheerleading from one or the other. It's not about what you choose, but that what you choose, it perhaps has that spark of I guess what I would call extraordinary, right? Don't miss out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, that's for me is very important in terms of this book and this invitation to live intimate relationships and our sexual lives from a more free space, less conditioned, free from ideologies, wherever they are monogamous or polyamorous. In a way, I feel like I've been doing with the monopoly dichotomy, something similar that as the transgender movement did with gender, like, not long ago, we never thought like we could be more than either a man or a woman, and now the transgender people, have taught us through their lives and their testimonies, that you can be many things in between and beyond. So, and I think that's what I'm trying to do here. Like, and I think you're right. It's not so much what we choose, but from where we choose it. Are we choosing to be monogamous or polyamorous? From a place of freedom? Are we choosing it from a place of social pressure, religious conditionings? For me, it's not important if we're monogamous or polyamorous, but are we living the intimate life that is more aligned with our evolving potentials? And in my own life, as I think you know already, I moved from different styles. Started monogamous because that was in Spain. That was the only option, was the default option, like in most Western countries. And then quite soon, like I remember, like I still remember, like it was this flash of insight. Like I was walking in Barcelona with my first steady girlfriend, and I was very much in love with her. She was very much in love with me. It was a very beautiful relationship. And then suddenly I had like this stroke of insight. It's like a flash. It's like, wow, what does it mean? It means that now that I'm in this beautiful relationship, because it's like a steady relationship where it means that I cannot love in fuller ways or in ways involving physicality or sensuality any other person in the planet out of the 900 million people that today are in the world. It struck me like a delirium of cosmic proportions. And that was the beginning of like this search for alternative relationships. And then after many years, I came out of the closet in California as a polyamorous person. But then down the line, after living open relationships for some years, I realized that there was something inside that wanted to explore and live what monogamy has to give me. So actually, for the next almost 10 years, I lived like the most important relationships were monogamous relationships. In between all this time, also, I was drawn to celibacy. I was celibate for almost 3 years, and it was not like a spiritual decision or a mental decision. It was my own energy going inward and going into a period of what I call kind of like a second latency, before, like a second adolescence, second latency, like and then the waking up of the sexual energies organically was what I call a postgenital puberty, in which kind of was a different kind of sexuality after that, So in a way, like moving from polyamory and then celibacy and then monogamy in different parts of my life, up to this point right now, for example, I'm not in relationship with anyone. I'm cultivating more friendships. I'm devoted to my work. I have beautiful friendships with different degrees of physical intimacy, but not sexuality at the moment, because it's my moment, and also because I lost my partner like 2 years ago. So I'm still mostly recovered from the grief process, but although that's an ongoing saga. So in any way, but all this, the main point I want to make is like, after living all that, I realized that I could be both. I could be monogamous or polyamorous without serious fears or conflicts, and that gave me the freedom to choose. And I think that's something that I value, and I believe that most people could naturally value, to have greater freedom over being kind of a pawn or conditionings or unconscious forces.
So when I hear all this, right, where my mind goes, well, who is this man, both that can think this way, that can take action in his life in that way, like where I kind of take it back. So then of course I'm curious of the ordinary habits, right? But really, maybe it's more like, and I talked about, when I'm in your presence, I feel like that force to be reckoned with. Like even just now, there's a way that I feel like you invite us, but also dare us to that freedom, right? Or just as you said it, like you can be that and beyond. And again, if you seeing like what's most extraordinary is having touched so many people and having that feedback. So again, there's a way I want to acknowledge the force that is received from what you express, and to at least I'm sitting here and receiving your invitation. So if I go back to the source of that force, so I'll say that again, to the source of that force, maybe the inception of that, I'm curious, like what drives, or what is the spark of that source? Maybe we can start there.
Excellent. I would say like several things here, like I would say, well, first of all, I want to give credit what credit is due, and that's to my mom.
Not seriously, right? Where would we be? Exactly.
So I don't have children, but I have a great admiration to all parents, and I think I was very lucky, very fortunate to have a mother that was like Winnie called the good enough mother. More than the good enough mother, was someone who was always there when we need her, but she was never invasive. She allowed us to explore the world. She encouraged us to explore the world, but she was never invasive. And the other thing that came to mind, I think is important, more biographically, is like both my parents couldn't do what they wanted to do. My father wanted to be an artist, and was post-fascist times, post-war times in Spain. My grandfather didn't support him. My mother wanted to be a scientist. She's an Aquarius, very idealist. She wanted to stop hunger in the world. So she studied chemistry to find a cure for hunger, like something like that. But it was like this Franco-fascist Spain, very patriarchal. And there was a professor in her class that would announce publicly that the few women who were there, they would never pass his class. So the other women had to go to Madrid to pass this class. They were living in the south of Spain, my parents. And my mother couldn't because their family was something going on with money and had to stop universities. Yes, she couldn't continue. And that was also like the kind of the source of like kind of my own kind of inner feminism. I use the name Ferrer is my mother's last name, not my father's. And there was kind of a statement, like an honoring of that, because in Spain also we lose the women's last names.
Lineage,
after 2 generations. In the States, just after 1 generation, they get lost. Why is that? It's another sign of patriarchy. So I use Ferrer to honor that. Nothing to reject my father. If at some point I would paint or write poetry, I would sign with his name. But in terms of intellectual search, so anyway, like both my parents somehow transformed their misfortune into a great gift for me and my brother, because since we're very little, the message that they gave us was always like, Jose, that's the name of my brother, please don't care about money, don't care about power, don't care about fame. The most important thing in this world is to do what you really want to do. And then both of us went into, all our friends went into typical, doctors, economists, businessmen, lawyers. Were in a very good school in Barcelona. And my brother and I went into different directions, very not mainstream, transpersonal psychology, right? But both of us love what we're doing. So we became quite successful in our work. We live from our passions, and so I think that's kind of at the root. And if I may add one more thing, and a more what drives me into all this is kind of like a selfish reason. It's like about like wanted to be in a world in which I feel more at home, So I drive to transform the world, both with my transpersonal spiritual work, but also with all this work on intimate relationships, because the world I found is a world that I don't want to live in. If it feels very constraining, feels like a world that it's hard for me to call home, So, and of course, hopefully, as we do this, we transcend to this dichotomy between selfishness and altruism. We do things for ourselves, but also that serve hopefully others. So I think that some of the biographical and behind that driving force, behind that spark that you mentioned. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and then I think there are pivotal moments. So and thank you for painting us the kind of like the picture, right? We see your mother and your father in that time of Barcelona or Spain, right? War and fascism and hard times to be an artist or even follow what there's so much of the cause, right? Like we're in that level of serving that cause, and you're either with us or against us, and so. Do you have, sometimes we have a memory of the moment that we decide? And I guess what I'm curious about, was there a deciding moment, kind of like we have the aha moment of, right, usually like women have it, it's like, I'm not going to be my mother, right? Yes. Where maybe for you it's the opposite. So let me clarify my question. My question is, do you have a deciding moment, or maybe it's more like it's always maybe coming from your mother, you were sort of like the answer of your mother, and it wasn't a decision, but you were the answer itself.
Yes.
So I want to know if
that's great. Well, it really depends for different parts of my life, because as you know, like my work and was in different directions, like for example, the more transpersonal work and more intimate world, intimate relationships, So I think the transpersonal, I think was more cumulative events in my life. I think you have read about them, some of them, like when I was a child in the school, I would get into this kind of trance-like states. I would see everything blank around me, but I was in a place of a lot of peace and joy. And then the teacher or students would wake me up. I would crack crying because I was in such a beautiful, blissful place. And I couldn't explain what was going on. They talked with my parents. They took me to the psychologist to see if I had like epileptic spells, They did testing. I was completely healthy. And only much later, after many years of Buddhist meditation, I understood that what I was experimenting was what is called one of the first jhanas, states of absorption, of concentration, So I had this kind of states, and then later in my pre-adolescence, out-of-body experiences. I started experimenting out-of-body experiences, what at first were very scary. And it's like, I want to come back, I didn't know what they were, and then only later I started reading about them. It's like, oh my God, it's describing exactly what I experienced. So that kind of like really like inside within me, a curiosity for the human psyche, for its possibilities beyond what our culture told us that was possible, like for example, the possibility of experimenting yourself outside of your body, and that together with awareness of my own neurotic patterns in my adolescence and youth, it drove me to study psychology, like searching for healing and understanding, of those states, and of course, mainstream psychology would not offer. Was pathologizing those states, and also healing. Most of the psychology study at the University of Barcelona in the late 80s, was cognitive neuroscientific psychology. So it didn't kind of offer the kind of healing I was looking for. So I started kind of like searching until I found transpersonal psychology. And that was like a very important. And on the intimate life, I would say that part of what a very important moment was when I found myself in my young adulthood cheating. I found myself at some point, I was with a partner, and then I was living for 1 year in England, and I had other connections there, and I found myself kind of like cheating, and I just felt like, why? I mean, this is crazy. Why why are we cheating, with each other? Like, why am I cheating the person I love? Why cannot we talk about this, So I think that also was like very important moment. It was like my heart was like really in pain. It's like, why? It really was very hard, So that was, I think, a defining moment as well, like that pain, hard pain about like my own kind of lack of integrity, or I couldn't know how to do it differently at that time, and that kind of also like pushed this kind of search for more, I don't know, transparent relationships in which everybody, could also live the intimate lives that they really want to live, not the intimate lives that they have been told by the culture or parents or schools or religions that they have to live because they are the only one culturally accepted or religiously or spiritually correct.
I mean, I can hear your mother speaking. It's like, do not settle for what they tell you, be who you want to be. So a couple of things, it sounds like, well, you came already with, and I want to be careful not even to call them gifts, because having those kind of experiences, maybe for some people is a gift, for other people, they really have a hard time integrating that into their life. I know several that really have had a hard time integrating out of body experiences or even transcendental experiences that then they don't know how to integrate. So, but nonetheless, maybe what I'm trying to extrapolate is like, we all come with aspects, right? Whether good or bad is not about good or bad, but we all come with who we are. And then we, then we make lemonade with our lemons, right? In some ways. But so you had these experiences that impacted, of course, of what you were interested, how to find healing, which I also believe we all, right? Because of either what we came with or situations with our family, experiences at school or whatever, then we have a whole lifetime to repair those situations and bring healing to others so that doesn't happen. So all that to say is, what I'm seeing in terms of simple things that I'm watching you do, or that perhaps are signatures. One, I'm surprised of a self-awareness, even in such early age, so I wonder if even that came from your parents, sort of like an awareness of, hey, I'm having these experiences, or hey, this is this or not that, self-awareness, and then that gift of don't settle, like both, like, well, why am I cheating? But then what does this mean, and what do I want to create? Can you see how maybe those qualities and those?
Yes, that's great. And just to play a little of devil advocate with myself, like a few years ago, because the story I told you about my parents, in a way, was kind of one of my containing myths. We all have these myths of,
we idealize. It's a beautiful story to tell.
It's a beautiful story to tell, right? And I tell it and I feel it, and it's great, So a few years ago, I went to a retreat in the beautiful island of Gabdos, South Crete. It's kind of family constellations and many other things. And I told that story, and the therapist was really good. She told me, oh, so your parents settle for the life they even want to live, and that's why you can never settle.
Right.
So in a way, he put it in a way, like, I could see both. It's like, okay, I can see how that kind of like a sense of like that positive message from my parents like helped me to, in a way, like to trying to open new ground, like to really go after what's new, the cutting edge, and personally, and also my own personal quest for liberation and healing, and extended to people I know, and like in my classes, in my students and everything, really great, has given a lot of fruits. And then she gave me this counterpoint. It's like, oh wow, I felt like, wow, Tao Te is like, maybe what would be of me if I would settle, what that would mean for me, what would it mean to settle, like not to be always like, looking for what's next, So I think that's part of what little I've been doing since I moved to this beautiful island of Ibiza. I continue with my work, and workshops and ceremonies and these, books and podcasts, but in a more tranquil way, in a more tranquil way. That's probably only age can give one, like more tranquilo and less driven, maybe. I can recognize that also drivenness in my youth. That was good, and I was. I think it was like even necessary, because you need to, be this, has with strength, to open new grounds. But now I'm just taking things a bit more easy.
Okay, so let's look under the hood there, right? And actually I love it, yeah, because I even think it's like, yeah, where we define the quest for freedom as not settling, or is sort of like definitions that we make of ourselves, right? So the quest of freedom means challenging, those definitions, and that is freedom, right? Making your own definitions. But so in a more, and you talk about spirituality, embodied spirituality. So a lot of your, I guess, message and your teachings is about embodiment.
Yes.
So if we take this, which I'm gonna, not so gently start calling it a habit of not settling, so if we extrapolate perhaps part of your childhood, part of your necessity, right, of finding your own way and your own healing, could be a habit of constantly driving and challenging and seeking what's new and seeking your own answers. But again, if I take it back, when I see what is our listeners can't see, but it's sort of like the impulse. There's sort of like an impulse that moves us to that it's not moves us to move, the impulse to a movement, to an action, right?
Yes.
So wait, now I got all excited and I lost it. So if that is the drive, so I wanted to bring it to now, to the living now, to the embodiment. So in your day-to-day, like even this morning, what is that like? How can we, and what I'm trying to do is like, how can I connect even like my sensory feeling being with you right now, in what it's like in your day when that impulse to drive or to not settle, to look, to seek, what is it like? How does it move in your day this morning,
That's great. Well, just this morning I was finishing another manuscript for another book. It's like a popular version in Spanish of Love and Freedom, and it's with diagrams and exercises, and got a nice contract from a publisher in Spain. So I was kind of working on that and getting excited about this, because in a way it's like my first popular book, and like this idea of like reaching the masses, like reaching more people, that's with a message that feels so crucial for people's well-being. Because I mean, I don't know you, but in my everyday life here and almost everywhere I've lived, most of people's deep issues are relational, are some, of course, I don't want to minimize challenges, economic, health, of course there's many serious challenges in life, but given that people are healthy and have more or less a way to make a living, like relationships, and especially when they involve intimacy and sexuality and love, it's really like a huge source of either joy and happiness, or frustration and happiness. So I think this thing of like bringing perspectives that hopefully can really like help many people really drives me very strongly, and I don't want to sound I don't know, like this is delicate, because some of the participatory world, participatory thinking, but that kind of energy, I mean, I see in myself and in everybody, that it's the creative force of life or reality or spirit, if you may want to call it that way, moving through us, so it's not just personal, it's transpersonal. We are just a vehicle. We're kind of like, I see myself as a gardener, because also my different disconnects with embodied spirituality, different parts of myself, my mind, my heart, my instinctive energies, I garden them, but the energy of life, it's coming through us, and of course we have like the the responsibility, to articulate that energy in ways that I think are constructive for society or culture or our communities, But I would say that ultimately that spark is something that comes through us. It's not ours. It's not mine. It's not our possession. It's just comes through us.
I don't know if I'm going to make a connection to just ease my anxiety of being with you, that, I feel your drive of like doing. And so you just finished your fifth book, or is it
Yes.
your fifth book? So you just finished your fifth book, plus all the essays and all the articles you've written, plus all the, again, I go back to the force, right, that you carry. Again, it's easy. I don't know if it's easy. I guess I want to ask our listeners to just pause for a moment. And what is it like for each of us to be in the presence of somebody like you that, at least to me, seems so obviously connected to a certain kind of force that drives you, that motivates you to write the next essay, to engage the next conversation, to live fully your life. So when I sit here, I actually get a little anxious and overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I don't have that energy. No, it's so funny because you have this, oh, poor Maria, is not poor, but but I think it's important, because I think part of what I see in my clients, and part I see, you said the suffering is relational. I think also it's how we compare to each other. It's like, well, Jorge is achieving that, so then therefore I must be lacking something, right? Or to be extraordinary and achieve extraordinary things, then I need to be like Jorge and find somewhere in me some, driving force that I can accomplish many things. Okay, that was a big context. What I wanted to say is that the connection that you made of the spark of, yes, I make things, but also what I heard you say is like, it's a force that works through you, right? It's not even yours, which I'm going to mark here. We could talk about a habit of perhaps connecting to that and letting it work through you. But for now, for the sake of the point I'm trying to make right now, it's like, right, then if it's an energy that you allow to work through you, then it's not the quantity. So maybe what it's extraordinary about you, and maybe I want to move here towards like what you've mastered. Maybe it's not that you've mastered the intellectual thesis that you can, put out, which are extraordinary and really impressive, or your capacity to love so many people. Perhaps the mastery, and this is a question to you, but the mastery is actually to the openness to let whatever needs to come through you, which for Jorge Ferrer's life, it's a lot of energy, right? Like that's what kind of source is asking you to produce. But maybe for Maria Bailey, it's a different flavor, it's a different rhythm, it's a different quality. So it's not about having an idea of what it needs to look like, how much, but being true to what is being asked, being open to express it, and accepting that it's enough, whatever. So yes. Maybe you can make sense of what I just said. I think I was channeling something there.
I absolutely agree with you. Like, well, I want to say too that you do have a lot of energy. A lot. And also I don't feel myself a master of anything actually, but yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, I think the most important is like for each person, like to really like to work, with some kind of ideals that are beyond your own kind of self-centered pleasure and happiness and joy. As the Dalai Lama used to say, like the problem is that it's not that people are selfish, it's that they're selfish in a stupid way. If you are selfish in an intelligent way,
yeah,
right, then you realize that happiness depends on the joy and happiness of people around, and that doesn't matter the range, or it can be in a family, it can be in a small group, it can be in larger groups. It doesn't matter, it's not about quantity. I totally agree with you. It's about the quality of relationships that we help to enact with our actions, with our kindness, with our openness, with our availability to others, with our generosity of listening and and so forth, you know. So I would say that that's definitively like I resonate very much with what you said. Something I would add here with this connection about life and also creative energy, and I would say, and I go back to the topic of sexuality. I would say like sexuality is very important here because you know, sexuality in a way is like the first soil in which kind of the creative energy of life gets kind of organized in human nature, right? Sexuality is that energy also that can create another human being. I don't know if you have children of your own. I believe
I don't.
you don't, but I don't either. But I've seen it many times happening around.
And you've practiced many times. Yeah.
Yes, but not with that goal.
Yeah.
But yes, so so that energy of life, you know, is the same energy of life that can be also channeled through all these more creative. Is the source of genuine creativity. There is too much today in the world of what I call second order creativity, smart mental permutation of already known ideas, you know. But there is not so much of like genuine first order creativity. It's those creativity that comes from your guts, you know, comes from that instinctive energy, the energy of life coming through you. And so for me, creativity is not something happening in the brain or even in the right brain, like we're told in the 80s and the 90s, right? It's something that comes from that energy. And that's why in part it's so important, not only for your well-being, that kind of sexuality is like an open field. It's a field that is not constrained or conditioned by blocks, by inhibitions, by social conditionings, by religious ideologies, you know, because all those things kind of stifle the channel, you know, and the sexuality that is open and it becomes like a porous, much more porous, more permeable. It's like a soil, you know, when the gardener works on the soil to plant the seed. What he does? He makes it more porous. Soil that is kind of compacted, he works to make it like more loose.
Right, right.
That's what we can all do. That's what we can all do. And doesn't matter if your work is if you're a father, or if you are like you are working in a business, or you are working in a store, you know, and you can have a creative life, both in your work, but also personally. And for that, I think it's really important to work on that kind of like being the gardener in your own sexual world.
Okay, so this is where we need to get down to earth and specific and embodied, right?
Okay.
Because I wanna stand here for hopefully the hundreds or thousands of people that are going to listen to this, and we all have our ideas of what sexuality is, what even like this sexual freedom, you know, we all have our ideas, and maybe judge ourselves of where we fail or where we're not. So I want to meet everybody just where they are. Yes. And you're nodding, and I think again that you do so beautifully in your book that it's wherever you are and whatever is right for you in this moment, given your context, given your capacity, given that wherever you are is perfect. So I want to start here if you're listening to this, wherever you are, it's great. Okay.
Yes.
I
can try to, go ahead.
No, well, because I again, and I want to make the bridge of where each of us is, right? That if it's okay, yet you are speaking of something or to something, that maybe if you're listening to this podcast and you read the title, something in you is maybe longing or curious, right? About something that maybe you don't understand yet or you're longing for. So I don't want to give it a name or anything, but I want to acknowledge that you are where you are. Maybe Jorge and you are pointing to something that we can even begin to dream of, and not dream because it's better, just that is out there that we can't name or see, but we know something is there. And what I want to make the bridge is, how do each of us, where we are, connect to that which you just pointed to, which you call freedom. And again, I want to be careful how we define freedom. It's unknown. It's a invitation to freedom that we don't know how to define yet, but it's out there. How is it true, more at the level of principle, that no matter where we are in our continuum, it's always present? And how can we connect? Like, so the gardener, you're saying, oh yeah, poor soul. And well, again, I can look at the neighbor, the grass is always greener. I can look at the neighbor, it's like, oh my God, they have such a great garden. And I don't even know where to begin, which is actually true. Like, I planted daffodils for the first time last fall because I really wanted to see how, but that takes a lot of work to have the vision to plant in autumn for something to grow in spring, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking, if we're looking at our garden, and however we're looking at, maybe it's dry soil, maybe we actually don't even know what's there. Where is the principle? Where is it true? How do we connect? And again, maybe also I don't have the right question, but I want to make the bridge that wherever we stand, what you're pointing to, we can find in our current garden. I guess maybe.
Yes, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Trying to be a bit more concrete, with what I was saying. What I would say is like, many people in our culture approach sexuality in ways that sometimes, or their sexual relationships with their partners become more monotonous, more mechanistic, even sometimes dissociated from their hearts, many people, and especially even younger generations, are also learning sexuality from porn videos, for example. What they learn there is a very mechanistic sexuality, and pornography, it could have its value, and it could have its tragedy. It can create addiction, can create a lot of problems, and for some people, it could be liberating at certain moments. Like I have a friend who she was sexually repressed for many years, and another female friend gave her some porn videos, like filmed by female directors, and for her that was a discovery, and she felt empowered to start having sexual relationships. So we need to understand that almost with anything in life, everything could be good or bad depending on the context and for each particular person. But the point here is that most people are really like, if you look at the statistics of like one of the most famous pornographic websites in the world, Pornhub, last 2009 they were like 42 billion hits. We're talking about the numbers are like huge, tremendous, like so this is what is called the pornographication of society. It's the phenomenon, and it's not just men, it's women. So people are learning this sexuality. It's very like it's mostly patriarchal on the one hand. Most of the videos end with a male orgasm, and it's also very mechanistic and like genital center and so forth. So this is part of what I think we need to, because in a way we have like we have kind of on the one hand devoid our everyday life from eros. The erotic has been moved into our sexuality. But in a way, in this kind of mechanistic sexuality, we're devoiding also our sexual lives from eros. It's a double expulsion of eros, and eros as a mystery. So the invitation is to really re-encounter sexuality with ourselves and others as a mystery. And that's, of course, it's also like a bridge to spiritual awareness and to spirituality. For me, spirituality and sexuality are two sides of the same coin. It's like a Moebius strip, if you go deeply into the realms of consciousness, really deeply, as you probably know, as a meditator and a consciousness inquirer, you go into places of ecstasis. If you go deeply into the sexual energy, the sense of the sacred emerges as well. But for that, we need to move with these superficial forms of sexuality and really approach the encounter with the other as a mystery, and also the encounter with the other as a way for that mystery that is eros to flow between us and beyond. And for that, one of the things to become a bit more concrete that I have found personally, ordinary habits, personally very effective in that regard, is to free sexual intercourse, sexual encounters from the compulsion to orgasm. because most men and women also have also learned to go for orgasm. And once you take this out of the picture, that's a game changer. It's a game changer. On the one hand, it finished the whole thing about like the sexual act finishing with the man having an orgasm, you know, or helping her to have an orgasm. And of course, once you free sexuality from the compulsion to orgasm, you know, sexual encounters become normally longer, and also the energy start flowing from the genital area to the body, and pleasure. Here we can understand pleasure as the gift that the sexual energy gives to the body when the body welcomes her. When the body welcomes that energy, it feels like pleasure. It's like a gift. So and therefore. With that kind of like more, you know, like if you want to say like full body sexuality, it's like it's a sexuality that also makes the whole body more porous, not only to all that life energy, eros, but also to the energies of consciousness. So therefore the sexual encounters become like this, you know, could be a prayer, it's a meditation, could be many things, could be also recreational and silly, it doesn't have to be solemn, and could be everything.
Yeah, singing,
you know?
Dancing, taking a walk with your dog, looking. Lately I can hear the wind in the cottonwoods, and it's amazing with that kind of ear, the pleasure or the actual somatic experience of listening to the winds, to the leaves in the wind is fantastic.
Yes, and taking the hint for what you said before to the listeners here, like the importance of the comparing mind, you know, like taking it off, the comparing mind, especially people are comparing themselves with porn actors. It's kind of stupid. Taking that beyond that, and also this sense like that there's no mistakes in sexuality. There's no errors.
Wow, that's huge, because we have so much shame and
I know there's no errors. Everything is a learning. Everything is that is innocent and beautiful. And whatever happens, if there is an erection or not, if people come before or later, it's all okay. You know, of course, there is certain conditions that can be, you need to pay attention to if they are becoming problematic for your sexual life. But in general speaking, like to open, that's opening the soil. All that is open in the soil makes more sense.
So I know how to. I want to ground this to make it more real. How is it true right now in this conversation? Because again, we talk about sexual, and people then might think it's intercourse, or it's only when it's in bed, or how everything that you've talked about is true in this conversation.
Well, as I speak of this, I feel the energy circulating in my own body. And I also feel that there is something going on between us, even through the cyberspace. There is like a connection. There is like an eros, and eros is not about sexual desire necessarily. It's not about hitting on you, you're hitting on me. It's about like it's like the erotic quality of life, you know, that is kind of life affirming, and it's also like it's affirming of your beauty as a unique embodiment of life and the divine, you know, and your sexiness, regardless of your form, of who you are or your age. You know, everybody has its own beauty. You know, that's one of the things we need to decolonize in our culture, especially men who are more visual than women. Like decolonize perception. Our culture is super oculocentric. It's very focused on the eyes. In many of the workshops I offer, sometimes I create dyads, and I tell people, I blind people, and people they choose their partners with the sense of smell, not through their eyes. Right. Why? Because the sense of smell on the one hand is very instinctive, and actually the sense of smell is going to pair you with people that energetically many times are not the people that you would choose visually, but are the people that you will do some work with them. I don't work sexually, it's physical. I work with embodied interaction meditations, bringing meditation practice to the interpersonal and embodied. But it's the people that normally, more than the ones that you feel attracted to through your eyes, that are going to open certain doors and windows within your experience, you know. So yes, there is eros here, and hopefully this eros can be also experienced by some of the listeners, or many of the listeners, or all of them, as we continue speaking.
Right. So then the habit, and I want to then, even intentionally slow down. So perhaps you and I can feel it, and then our listeners can also take a pause to see from the shower of arrows that we are generating right in this conversation. Then what is the habit? And I guess it's interesting because every time I have a conversation, I think I come to a new definition of what habit is. But what I'm defining now, habit, is sort of like how we tend to perhaps the moment. What is our natural, maybe even, I don't want to say compulsive, but it's like, yeah, our natural way to respond to the moments,
Yes.
right? So,
yes.
So I'm going to pause. I'm going to
Yes.
say, and then I'm curious, going back to that impulse, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does your body and your being, Jorge, what is the habit when we generate this energy, when we are alive, in the quality of life energy right now?
Yes.
What does it do naturally?
That's a great question. That's a great question. You know, for me, the word habit, I know it's the title of the podcast, but I would say more than a habit, although it could be developed as a habit, and that's maybe the point of what we're trying to cultivate here, like this awareness. It's kind of it's an approach or an attitude as a way of being, you know, in which, in particular, you cultivate a sense of like mental humility and openness, you know, and listening to your body and listening to your guts and listening to your heart. So because normally it's like, you know, our minds are super busy. We live in this super cognizant culture, you know, like everything is knowledge, and in a way we're doing that too. Hopefully we're doing a bit more than that. I think that's what getting into here right now.
Right.
Right. But I would say like to open the mind is a humble way as we speak, as we listen, you know, allow the mind to be more porous, to more permeable to the knowledge of the heart, to the knowledge of the instinct, to the knowledge of the body, you know. So a much more multidimensional or more complete understandings can emerge, because the mental perspective is just one and it's very limited. Reason, rational, analytics, logic is a very limited perspective that is overvalued in our culture. But we have forgotten, and I don't want to generalize, but most people in the West have forgotten to really live a life in which is kind of co-created by all of who you are, not only by your minds making decisions about everything, but really by your body, by your heart, by your instincts, you know. Look at the bookstores, you know, who have books about how to sit, how to breathe, how to. The body knows what's best for
The body knows.
For the body.
So can you indulge me then, and our listeners? I literally want to take one breath. And maybe even like catch up to our body. I love what you just said. Our body knows. So the habit, again, in this definition and how I'm being rediscovered what habit is discovering what is already happening. I interviewed Jeff Leitner in an early interview, and he was saying that he didn't believe that we actually needed to be even conscious of our habit, that the benefit and the gift of the habit is inherent in it, whether we're conscious or not. And what I'm realizing here, I'm learning, is like there's a and I think that's what you are advocating for, that the body knows that there's a naturalness. And so even now, as we slow down, perhaps the practice is to be aware of what the body does naturally. And to our listeners, like, just as you slow down with us, it's not to be Jorge or to be Maria, but what is your body doing naturally when it feels, hopefully this conversation has enlivened you in some way. So what does your body naturally do with this energy? And that I guess I'll let you say something, but I want to say, like, my hope is that by connecting to that and creating more awareness to that, you can cultivate that, what I'm going to call a habit, but it's more of a natural response to how your body naturally responds to aliveness.
Yes. I'm going to take another breath to digest what you just said. And feel into it. You know, as I feel into it in this moment, what I feel experientially is that my mind roots in my body. Like I see like these roots that go into my body, and then she becomes more quiet because she's connected, she's rooted in its own home, that is the body. It's mother. We were a body before we were a mind, all of us. So our body is the home, is the mom of the mind, you know, and therefore we better to pay attention.
No, I'm smiling because somewhere early in this conversation, you said you wanted to feel at home, that what drives you is to create and to connect and maybe to educate or find a shared understanding, to be at home. And so here we are at home in our bodies in this moment with each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I invite everybody who is listening to cultivate this sense of feeling at home in their bodies to begin with, because that's your most fundamental home. And then through your bodies, in your surrounding areas, in your relationships, in life, in nature, of course. We need like to get grounded not only in the body, but in nature. The body is nature. Sometimes we forget.
Yeah. And so if we go back to the introduction, again, like I said, you don't disappoint, Jorge. You know, like you bring such mystery. You know, like I feel the power, right? Like the force of this conversation, that I feel changed. Like I'm sweating, my skin is tingling. Like what just happened? You know, but is the ability to know that I was touched by something that transpired here, and left with the question of, but what is it? Right? Even like when we say home, is again what I feel you inviting us is like there's no fixed definition either to monogamy or polyamory, or what happiness is, or what freedom is. Even you challenged yourself, like, you know, I think freedom is not settling, but what would happen now as you settle more into this time in your life, and what would it mean perhaps to be settled and free? I guess I'll leave you to close how you're leaving this conversation, maybe even how you're changed and touched by this conversation, and what's next for you.
Wonderful. Well, I would say like I do feel doubts, and also I've been feeling a lot of energy, and I feel things to gestate. Like I think like a true encounter between two human beings does not, when it's true encounter, we fertilize each other. It's a mutual conception happening, a mutual fertilization. We kind of like mirror in each other, like some of our own vital seeds, you know, those seeds that were deposited in our primary energy by our parents when they came together and created your life. That beautiful moment of conception, scientists call it genetic dispositions. I prefer to call them vital seeds, you know. So when these encounters happen, that feels genuine. I think we're fertilizing each other. So now I feel like a little of a pregnant woman who need to gestate the encounter, so that I can welcome with my welcoming presence inside, so that those seeds, when they start blooming, they find like a welcoming uterus of presence within myself, and they can really transform, so that at some point I experience something in my heart, like something I feel different, or a new feeling, or something, and that maybe at some point I'll feel something I can articulate that now I cannot, because it's too soon for this process, you know. So yes, I would say that it is in these encounters, like with everything in life. I love Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher who always says like you know uh, making some Buddhist doctrines come down to earth in his own unique ways. Like say, well, the taste of an orange, it's the orange doesn't have that taste in itself. The taste of the orange emerges when we taste it with our own salivary or own particular organism. And for other people is like that, like the sponge I use in my bathroom is super soft for me. For an ant, it's super hard.
Right.
So everything happens in the encounter. Everything happens is in the in between. Everything emerges in the in between because we're always in relationship, right? So I'm appreciating that in this moment with you, and also with the invisible people that I don't see now that are going to be listening this podcast, and I know will be listened to in the future, but I can feel them. I can feel them as if they were here with us in this moment. I feel very grateful.
And I join you with that. I want to bring in your mother and give gratitude to your mother, give gratitude to your father. We didn't mention, but I also want to give gratitude to the many teachers and mentors you had, because I've been, again, getting to know you in the last few weeks, reading about you. And I know that both seen and unseen, you have a wonderful entourage of allies and helpers. So I want to thank them too. Since we being in this liminal space that we are here in the relationship. I also want to acknowledge like the journey that we just went in. Like it was sort of like the encouragement that you can, don't settle. We started off with the, conception of your mother. It was like, you can do whatever you want to be, and your encouragement of go beyond of. And actually a key point of what in this conversation, when you were saying, well, there's a quality of life, and so there's an approach and an attitude towards that quality of life that gives you sort of like that humble openness. And so if I want to check in with you, if I were to kind of, what I'm taking away of, well, what is the seed then that Jorge is leaving with me of something so basic, so human, something that you practice that then allows you to do what you do, right? Your books, your essays, you produce so much that the mastery, and again, I know that is a tender, is not maybe a word that you resonate with, but a mastery is that sort of like approach or maybe sort of like a striving to that humble openness, to that quality of life. Would you, and listen, I think also, again, the quality of listening to, you said, to our heart, listening to our instinct. So again, if I don't want to reduce it, it's more, actually it's not like a pure reduction, like a good cream,
Distillation.
Yeah, exactly. Like the pure essence of what I'm taking away, the seed, is the quality perhaps of listening. Would you say that's accurate, or what would you add?
I think so. I think so. Like I think like that deep listening to, I think that's because listening that includes this kind of genuine curiosity and
Right.
and this
And porous, right? Like you said, it makes us
it
porous. Yeah.
connects with that sense of inquiry, that I mean, we need to realize we know nothing, we know shit, and that's the paradox of knowledge. The more we know, the more we're aware that the little we know, right? And that's I love what happened with modern cosmology in the last 10, 15 years. They thought they had mapped out the whole cosmos, we got it together, and then suddenly, like 87% or something like that, they don't know what the shit it is. Dark energy and dark matter. No one knows what the fuck it is. And and that for me was like such a beautiful lesson of the universe. To tell us, like, don't be so smart, ass. It's great that you are learning all these things about the universe. But the mysteries are infinite, and when you think it's like when you sometimes you realize that you know nothing. So this attitude of not knowing, I think that's super important, together with an attitude of inquiry that is creative, because as I mentioned before, for me, like the sense of inquiry, I experience it as that also movement of creative spirit through us, you know. It's through
Right.
creative inquiry that
Right.
we also kind of enact new distinctions and new understandings, and the cosmos itself, life itself, is also like moving forward, you know, in its own kind of
Well, it goes back to
evolutionary
what you were
process.
saying, that what moves through you. So again, it's not the idea to look like Jorge or to look like Maria or to look like your neighbor, but actually listen to that quality of life that is moving through you and
Yes.
serve that, right? And
Yes.
in whatever way, it's again the habit of natural responding to
Yes.
that invitation.
Exactly, and each of the listeners of this podcast, you know, it's a unique embodiment of life, or unique embodiment of reality, or the mystery, as I prefer to call it. And that in itself is quite amazing, and it's kind of infinite, right? More millions of people can be born into the world. No one would be equal to any other.
Right.
So
Right.
the infinite creativity of life and reality, we're an embodiment of that. And to realize that without inflation, because to realize that we are super special, but everybody else is super special as well. That I think it's a theory, like that's a good habit, I would say.
Beautiful. Jorge, how do you like to connect with people? How should people reach out to you, or what would be I mean, you said everything is in the encounter. So how should people encounter you?
Sure. Because I moved, in my new stage of life, you know, I resigned for my university. I was working there for 20 years, and I moved to this island of Ibiza. And so, you know, like I put for first time, I have a website. So it's Jorge N, like Nancy, Ferrer.com. And I also have an email, it's Jorge Ferrer 2012 at gmail.com. You can see there a lot of free writings, free videos, if listeners are interested in going deeper in some of these areas. And also, if I may, I offer also like have an international practice. Focus on the one hand, kind of like a psychospiritual counseling for people who are going through some kind of psychospiritual crisis, but mostly focus also on the individuals and couples struggling with relationships, specializing people struggling with jealousy, infidelities, and also the design of different ways of relationship. And I want to say that you know, the message of the book, of my last book, is about that. My approach is not about favoring monogamy over polyamory or beyond. It's about doing what's really truth for each person and what's most constructive in each situation, and give them tools to really create lives that are more fulfilling, especially after many years of being together, or when infidelities have taken place and so forth. Infidelities can be a tremendous opportunity for people and couples to grow and transform in ways that, in a way, even though without minimizing the devastating pain and agonizing pain that they can produce, in a way I see them like, wow, great. Let's go deeper now here. What's underneath that, you know? And you know, most people who I see, like, and also couples therapists that I know, and it's like ultimately the sometimes when they go deep down, most people have been, you know, adulterers or cheating their partners. They would say something like, I did it to feel alive again. Of course, with the exception of, you know, narcissistic borderline personalities who are selfish, you know, womanizer, you know, that's a different ballgame. But, you know, most honest people, that I would say that most people who cheat are not bad people. And that's one of the messages I try to correct. They're not damaged people, as most therapists tell them. They're people who are encounter themselves in relationship structures that they are no longer aligned with their growth, and they need to feel alive again. So that's what I help them to do.
Well, thank you, Jorge. And again, I hope for our listeners that they have found value in our conversation. They have found that aliveness in our encounter, that they have been touched in some way. I do think that your invitations, as we started, they're daring. You are daring. and like from that moment that I met you, it's a quickening, right, of what is it, right, and maybe I dare, maybe or not, but it's so whatever is for the listeners, whatever is true for you, to engage with this. Maybe it's just to take the seed and take it along and dream and take it for a walk, and or maybe it's just reaching out to Jorge and knowing more, research him or read his latest book. Really, it's a fine balance between very intellectual, you get a lot of information, but also heart-centered, very, very accepting, and in meeting you just where you are. So again, Jorge, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for bringing your energy and your mystery.
Thank you so much. This has been like a pleasure, and thank you everybody who is listening.
Okay, so to our listeners, until next time, be curious, be inspired, and simplify the way.